of December 2025. Good morning. Welcome to K-Talk. Welcome to the stream, Breaking Health Barriers. And I'm Dr. Jack Stockwell. I will be here for a couple of hours this morning, talking about a very important thing that we are offering to our patients that will start after the first of the year. I'm talking about purification and detox. It's something that we will be doing in the office, personally involved, and we're inviting you to join with us. The Chinese have taught for thousands of years that every spring is the best time to clean the digestive system, to detox, to purify, speaking primarily of the gut. We're not jumping the gun. We're just doing it right after usually the season of the worst eating that most Americans will do, from Halloween through Christmas. And then things drop off a little bit until Valentine's Day, where it picks back up a little bit. But what's really important is to understand the relationship between the health of your gut and the health of the body. That's why I titled this program, and it will be available at both X and YouTube under Breaking Health Barriers, youtube.com/Breaking Health Barriers, with today's date. And I've titled it, "To Cure Disease, You Must First Fix the Gut." And because, as I said, this is one of the most toxic periods of time because of what we eat. Now, toxins are everywhere. The EPA has identified over 50,000 toxic agents that are involved in our environment. And we're exposed to them every day. They're in our air, our food, our water, the products we touch. And since they contribute to health challenges, their removal can make you feel a lot happier and a lot healthier. And so I'm going to be talking about the balance program. I'm going to be talking about the purification program, because it's more than just a cleanse. It's a structured program that helps to rebuild the body from the inside out. And it's designed to help purify, nourish, and maintain a healthy weight and lifestyle. And those of you who need it, you know who you are. It's no big mystery. It doesn't take a whole lot of scientific investigation. If you've been putting on weight, or you put on weight some time ago and you're holding on to it, if you feel sluggish and tired in the morning, sometimes more tired than when you went to bed, if you have a hard time struggling through the day to have enough energy to take care of the things that need to be done, so that a lot of things that need to be done are not getting done because you just don't have the energy to do it, you might be interested in listening to today's program. Now, I'm going to repeat a bit of it during the second hour because the audience is always changing. According to Arbitron, the audience changes every 20 minutes because a lot of people listening right now are on their way to work. Some of you I affectionately refer to as lifers. You just don't turn K-Talk off. K-Talk's on all the time, regardless if it's a live program or some pre-recorded thing from some other source. That's the way I used to be back before I was working full-time. I've been listening to K-Talk since the 1970s, when I was glued to Bob Salter. And then I left the state, went to go back to school, came back here, knowing that if I was going to promote what I was doing in my practice, I had to do it at K-Talk. There's all other kinds of radio stations. But I had this affinity for the K-Talk people, K-Talk audience, because I'm K-Talk audience. And so I got on in March of 95, and it has been a wonderful ride ever since. I never thought, when I had my first appearance with Kay Henry in March of 1995, that I would end up being a talk show host, let alone the morning drive time for 20 years. That's another story in itself that I can tell some other time, because I want to get into the gut, because if you want to heal your body, you first have to heal the gut. And why is that? I want you to understand that the gut is this hollow tube. Starts at your mouth and goes down to your butt. And it is the outside world inside your body. Now, I want you to think about that. Your gut is the outside world but it's inside your body because it has a very tough barrier all the way around it, from the earliest mucosal surfaces inside your lips all the way down to the rectum, providing a tremendous barrier between what is moving through that tube, that hose, throughout the body from the inside of the body, to protect the inside of the body from what is inside that tube. And that tube has this powerful absorption system to filter what is coming through that tube, to take out what is good and to leave what isn't, to take what it wants and leave what it doesn't, until it reaches the large intestine, where the dehydration starts to take place, to turn this soupy mixture into a solid matter you can pass in a bowel movement. Now, interestingly enough, the majority of material that's in the bowel movement is not undigested food. It's the flora that lines this tube that your life depends upon. It's all the little bugs and the parasites and the bacteria and the microbes, all of them, the molds that live inside of us that our life depends upon. You are part of a community of life. And what you represent, as far as DNA and a human being is concerned, apart from these microbes, is in truth only about 10% of the total DNA present. 90% of the DNA inside your body is not human. It's this community of microbes that live in the gut that we share with them, in the sense that we give them a place to live, we give them warmth, we give them water, and we give them food. In return, they give us enzymes, they give us vitamins, they give us coenzymes, they give us chemical compounds that keep us alive so that they can be kept alive. Do they have a consciousness? I suppose to some degree. Do they know you by name? I doubt that, but who knows? But the fact is, the healthier this microbial existence, environment is, the healthier you are going to be. And how do you have a healthy gut? Well, the first thing is your food choices, of course. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about this to get a few ideas across to you, to set the stage, to talk to you about the detox program and the purification program that myself and my staff will be starting after the 1st, which, my goodness, was it just 2 weeks? 2 weeks from tomorrow? That doesn't mean you can hurry up and eat all the bad stuff you can and load up with all the Christmas stuff you can so that you can start this after the 1st of the year, although some people will be doing that. But we want you to join in with us. You would need to take a toxicity survey ahead of time, and you would need to take a symptom survey ahead of time, both of which are free. There's no cost for that, to set a base, a standard, that a few days later, if it's only the 10-day program or the full 21 or 28-day programs, that you can compare how you feel as to how you felt when you started. And so we're looking for those who want to join us. Now, this is something that you would order online ahead of time, and then we would all start together right after what you consume New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, and then let's pick January 2nd as the day to start. Because, I'll be partying New Year's Eve, and I'll be eating a bunch of stuff that I don't eat on a regular basis because I wait till New Year's Eve to eat it. Now, we all have this thick layer of bacteria that lines our gut, and it's referred to as the flora. Fauna, of course, are animals. Flora are plants. Although there are some animals in there, the parasites. And parasites aren't all bad. There are good parasites. Good parasites in the sense that they eat up the bad parasites, They eat up bad material, they eat up dead flesh, and they produce byproducts that tend towards our health. Now, these bacteria are essential to good health, and under the influence of drugs and other factors that I'm going to discuss, this gut flora can change in such a way as to predispose you to various kinds of health problems. And just what will happen in your case is unpredictable. It's individual to you. It goes back to your grandmother, and then to your mother, and then to you. And I'll give you an example of that here, of what I mean shortly. But it can, what will happen in your case is unpredictable in the sense that, you know what, I don't think, I did start the recording. This is being recorded at K-Talk as well as online. So anyway, one person, because of a dysbiotic relationship, dysbiosis, biosis meaning the process of life, dys meaning against it, like dysfunctional, the function isn't correct. Dysbiosis, the biota in our gut, the life, the flora, is not healthy. The sicker it gets, the sicker we are going to become as a whole human being. Everything from arthritis to schizophrenia. And rarely some people seem somewhat unaffected and recover completely, and just simply by rebuilding the damaged flora. Because when you get the wrong kind of flora, the overgrowth of the wrong flora, and that's not really the best terminology, but when you get an overgrowth of the wrong flora, like E. coli, they produce byproducts that are against health, that will make you sick, that will keep you sick. And then your body's immune defenses have to do something about it, and then you're in a constant state of inflammation. And a lot of us are completely unaware that this is taking place inside of us. We know the word inflammation. We hear it in the news all the time, that it's the beginning of disease, that almost every disease process has inflammation involved with it. But that inflammation starts in the gut. And the problem is it will spread from the gut to the bloodstream. Now, you have a very tight filtering system that lines the gut to make sure only what your body wants gets through that filtering system into the bloodstream. What would that be? Well, it would be fats. It would be very clean amino acids. It would be various chemical compounds that are broken down out of Mother Nature's foods that you've been eating, that the body recognizes that it needs for tissue repair, tissue regeneration, and for the ongoing program of a healthy body. But all too often, an overgrowth of this bad bacteria will cause a leaky gut, which is where leaky gut comes from in the first place, because these poisons have a way of eroding the wall of the gut, so things will get through the gut wall into the bloodstream that don't belong there. And then your immune system goes nuts. And your C-reactive protein increases, and your homocysteine increases. And then you start having labs that show that your kidneys and your liver aren't functioning as well as they should, because they're your body's filtering systems. And they start trying to work overtime, trying to filter stuff out of the blood that doesn't belong there because it got through the wall of the gut. So when I am talking about this detox program and this purification program, I'm talking about what is necessary to rebuild the wall of the gut. Now, at forbiddendoctor.com, under podcasts, under I think it's under education, and under podcasts, if you search GAPS, GAPS, I think there's at least 8 podcasts on how to rebuild the wall of the gut. What we're doing, starting January 2nd, my staff and myself, and we haven't completely decided between the detox or the purification. And the purification has different stages to it. But I think by the time I do next week's show on Christmas Eve, we'll pretty well figure out which one we're going to do. But before the show is over with today, I will explain these in detail. So you might want to join in with us. I have never known anybody in the last 2 decades plus where I have been using standard processed products, and you get a significant discount if you order it online through forbiddendoctor.com. I have never known anybody, in all honesty, that undertook one of these cleansing programs that did not come out on the other end feeling years younger, looking years better, and having the energy that they've been looking for some time, thinking they can get it from an energy bar or an energy drink. So, one thing is for certain, the flora in your gut isn't just producing a lot of different things for the systems of the body. It also is it is your immune system's right arm. Now, when I talk about the immune system, if I was talking about the nervous system and I said, where's your nervous system found? You may well point to the head. Yeah, the brain, here it is. If I ask, where is your circulatory system found? You may well point to the heart. If I say, where is your digestive system found? You probably would point to the stomach or something in the abdominal area. If I said, where's your reproductive system found, which is deeper interior of the body, you might end up pointing to a certain area where we find our sex organs, but that's not your reproductive system. Your reproductive system is deeper inside the lower abdominal cavity, both male and female. If I ask, where is your skeletal system? You could point about anywhere where the bones are. Where's your muscular system? Anywhere that there's muscles. If I said, where is your immune system? Where would you point? Well, if you know something about it, and listening to my health shows over the years, you should, you might point to your the glands that line the edge of the neck, your lymph nodes. You might point to that because the lymph nodes are the police stations of your immune system. You might even point to the thymus gland, which sits right behind the very top of your breastbone, which is where T cells are matured. T cells are the first line of defense. If you really want to get technical, you might point to the bone marrow, because that's where the white blood cells are born. Not just red blood cells, but white blood cells. But if you want to point to an area where the greatest concentration of your immune system is found, you'd point to the gut. 86% of your immune system is found lining the gut. Now, with everything that I've said so far about the gut in this morning's program, it should be obvious why the greatest police force in your body to keep you healthy, would be involved in the gut and the process of material coming across the gut wall into the bloodstream. Because your immune system there is constantly on guard that anything that gets through that should not be there is immediately attacked and destroyed. Because you do not want this stuff in the bloodstream. Your body will beg, borrow, and steal, do everything it can to keep your bloodstream as pure and clean as possible, which is why you can go to the laboratory at the hospital, get your labs done, and may show a couple of things, a couple of twists with your thyroid that it's not exactly normal. It may show a little elevated liver enzyme, but not to the point where anybody would be alarmed about it, and yet you feel like absolute hell, and you look like hell. But your labs aren't all that bad, because your body will do everything to keep that blood clean, because that blood is feeding the brain. Not just all the organs, but the brain. And it will work overtime in the gut to try to keep things as clean as possible. which leads to an inflammatory process if there's too much gook getting across the wall of the gut into the bloodstream. And then you'll have numbers in your labs that indicate that. Now, when you have a weakness in the immune system, the first area that, I don't want to use the word default, but that's the one that first came to my mind. When the immune system begins to default in its immediate job, it's going to be there in the gut. And you're going to have something called gut dysbiosis, or damaged, altered gut flora, and is actually handed down from one generation to the next. Some of the latest discoveries about this is just revolutionary as far as I'm concerned. Again, another subject that should be on the front page of every newspaper across this country. But it's suppressed, it's covered up, because Big Pharma doesn't want you to know this. To a large degree, the health that you're experiencing in your life right now isn't just dependent upon what you've eaten the last 48 hours. It goes back to your grandmother and probably your great-grandmother. Now, both of my grandmothers were born in the 1890s. And I'm 75. So it's more than 100 years later. But both my grandmothers, I think one was 1895, the other was 1896. And so, and they're both of them have access to farm foods. One of them more so than the other. My father's mother, actually, when my father was born, shortly after that, they moved to Southwest Pennsylvania and kind of living on a farm, had farm life, had fresh milk from the cows, fresh eggs from grass-pastured chickens, grass-pastured animals, and a garden. And so they kind of had good stuff. My other grandmother was raised in the city. And on Reeves Avenue in Fairmont, West Virginia, 111 Reeves Avenue, I remember. And their food came from the local marketplace, which this is before grocery stores. So a lot of the food was supplied by local farmers. And so it was a little bit better diet than my mother was raised with, because by the time my mother was raised, stores started showing up. Now, I said all that to say this. If your grandmother was raised more on local city stuff rather than farm foods, she had an early case of dysbiosis, which would have showed up in a whole bunch of different ways. Indigestion problems, allergies, headaches, menstrual problems, all related to this inherited dysbiosis that she may have gotten from her mother. But I'm not going to go back further than your grandmother. And then, did my grandmother breastfeed my mother? I don't know, but let's just say, for example, she didn't. And then when I was born, 1950, Dr. Spock had pretty well convinced women at that time that fresh breast milk from a healthy mother, healthy breast, was bad for the baby, and they should be drinking compounds made in laboratories instead, which makes as much sense as getting your vitamins from a laboratory as opposed from Mother Nature. But here's your grandmother, a little bit of gut dysbiosis. The gut dysbiosis starts to get a little bit worse because they're not eating directly from farm food. And so she has your mother, or she has a daughter. And this daughter, passing through the birth canal, picks up what's in the mother's gut. What is in mama's gut is going to be in the birth canal. The entrances to those two areas are so close together, and bacteria migrate, that if you have a woman with a sick gut, she's going to have ongoing, constant menstrual problems, even up to something as bad as endometriosis that can be tracked back to gut problems. I've seen that with some of my younger female patients. By cleaning up the gut, the endometriosis disappeared. Cleaning up the gut, the polycystic ovary disease disappeared. Cleaning up the gut, menstrual cramping every month disappeared. Not to mention what cleaning up the gut can do for a man. But so the daughter comes along now from grandma, and she's born during a period of time when birth control pills show up. And because it's the new day and the new age, it's post-World War II, and now that we're in a recovery period, we may not be oriented towards, a half a dozen to a dozen kids that we might have been oriented to on the farm prior to the wars. And so the daughter now, because she's on birth control pills, is leading to an even worse case of dysbiosis. And it's going to be causing gut problems for which she may be taking more medication, leading to greater dysbiosis. And all of which ignores the underlying problem, and it just ends up making the gut problems worse as these toxicities build up in the liver, and they build up in the pelvis of the kidney. Then the daughter now has serious gut problems, resulting in more digestive problems as well as an immune system weakness. And these cause allergic problems like asthma, eczema, multiple infections, emotional problems. Yes, emotional problems, mood swings, bipolar stuff, anxiety problems. And at some point, she stops her birth control pills. She gets pregnant. She has her own daughter to whom she passes down everything that leads to serious gut dysbiosis, because the birth canal is loaded with not the healthiest bacteria, because it came out of the gut. And as a result, the granddaughter ends up suffering even more serious digestive problems, and even can lead to autism. Autism isn't just the result of vaccines. There are too many people who don't get vaccines who get autism. And at this stage, the beneficial bacteria that should be in the gut is no longer able to protect the gut from the ravages of all the opportunistic invaders, the stealth microbes like viruses and fungus, and the altered strains of bacteria and bacteria-like microbes. And thanks to our modern society, prescription drugs, poor diet, nutritional deficiencies, this is the normal gut for millions of Americans. And what kind of problems would you be suffering from now if you fell into this particular class or group that I'm talking about? As I said, skin problems, eyesight problems, breathing problems, cardiovascular problems, because the bad bacteria is not just limited to the gut itself. It starts to spread throughout the system. And all these people, the vast majority of them, are going to be getting help from every one of these problems and diseases that's caused by dysbiosis by the use of drugs. And this chronic doctoring almost always results in more prescriptions that are damaging to the gut, making the whole thing worse. So just how does all of this start? How can you cure it? And that's what I'm talking about with this detox program and the purification program. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about it during the next hour, but perhaps the most insidious and common cause of gut problems today, here in the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026, is the overuse of antibiotics These drugs destroy the beneficial bacteria that's in the gut. And you know that. And so if you ever are condemned to having to use antibiotics, a lot of times you'll start employing the use of probiotics to go along with it, which is a good idea. I talked to a lady the end of last week that I take care of who has habitual UTIs. Just one after another, separated by anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks of relief. And then it hits again, and then she's back on antibiotics again. To where I really think there's probably more antibiotics in her gut than there is flora. And what is she complaining of? All the splotchiness on her skin, skin's getting thin, hair's falling out, bad breath, constipation, insomnia, wakes up every morning at 3, can't go back to sleep for an hour, 2 hours, and just feels like crap. And so what I've talked about for the last 31 minutes, I try to talk about in 3 minutes when I'm consulting with a patient like this. And because for a lot of people, I have to go back to square one all the time. It takes a while to get it takes a while to get across to them that all these invading microbes and bacteria that are in you through the use of antibiotics, because the antibiotics, as you well know, is cleaning out the weaker population and creating antibiotic resistant bugs that just sit there and laugh at the antibiotic use that you use. It deadens enough of the bacteria to back off from the symptoms of the UTI for a short period of time, while the bad guys just sit there and bide their time until they can multiply after the disappearance of the antibiotic is cleared from the system. And after a few weeks, it's back there again. And antimicrobial drugs, antifungal drugs, like something like nystatin, really damages the gut. Painkillers, aspirin, ibuprofen damage the gut. Steroids damage the gut, like prednisone or hydrocortisone. Birth control pills, sleeping pills, heartburn drugs, all damage the gut. And so the chronic use of any of these can lead to all kinds of severe problems, especially in children or women with severe gut dysbiosis caused by these prescription drugs. Eczema, asthma, severe learning disabilities, all part of the clinical picture. And again, virtually all of these problems, from chronic ear infections to autism, are going to be treated medically with more and more drugs, while the underlying cause of the problem is almost completely ignored. And so poor diet and lots of processed and sugar-laden foods end up damaging the gut because they increase the number of fungus such as candida, for which a lot of ladies are prescribed nystatin, which is murderous to the flora of the gut. They also increase the number of streptococci and staphylococci and clostridia bacteria and the yeasts in the gut, and they encourage the primal forms of anaerobic microbes in the gut that harbors up to 500 different species of opportunistic microbes. And the diets that are high in sugar and processed foods are almost always low in fiber that you would get from fruit and vegetable, so that encourages even more the gut and the bowel dysbiosis. Now, I know I'm painting a rather dismal picture here, but this is what I deal with all the time in the clinic when people come in complaining of something that they have this condition, they have this disease, and they've been prescribed these drugs for that disease without ever really considering where it's coming from. And most of these so-called diseases are the result of systemic poisoning of this material getting out of the gut into the bloodstream. And then your immune system becoming overtaxed trying to deal with it, to where you get this immunosuppressive condition in the body. So you start picking up opportunistic infections like cold and flu. Do you see the chain of events here? So that's why we're going to be doing this detox balance program and this purification program starting on the 2nd of January. We'll have more information about it on the website, if it's not already there at forbiddendoctor.com, to explain in greater detail what's going on. Those of you who would like to join with us and do this, I guarantee you, if you will do it religiously and follow the steps and the stages that are involved in this program in as little as 10 days, you can be amazed at how much better you feel. Do you stop your meds? Of course not. Do you use better food choices? Yeah, you do during this period of time. And there's a booklet that goes with it to explain how to do these things. Now, as I said, the Chinese, as a part of Chinese medicine, have always talked about some kind of a purification, detoxification program that the body should go through every spring as you come out of the winter doldrums. We're going to move it up a couple months. We're going to do it this January. Now, as far as diet is concerned, I have a lot of information at, as I said earlier, forbiddendoctor.com under education, GAPS, GAPS. Just listen to those podcasts. Severe gut dysbiosis is not a simple problem to cure. What we have to do is rebuild the strength of the good flora, because the good flora keeps the bad flora under control. It's really interesting how that works. And if I don't, it may be a little too simplistic to compare it to the police force. But when you have defunding the police in the inner city of major cities, you're going to have an increase in crime, as we have seen over and over again during the last decade. When you bring in a stronger police force, crime has a way of cleaning up. When you bring in a better, stronger, more efficient border control, you have less coming across the border than you did before, leading to a little bit of a less of a crime wave. Now, at the risk of that sounding racist, at the risk of that sounding very unfair, we know over the last several years in the history of this country, the quality of some of the people coming across the border that could just walk across the river and come into the States. Now that that's been shut down to some degree, to a large degree, we seem to be having less of a problem. That's all I'm talking about with the gut, is a stronger enforcement, a police enforcement scenario that lines the wall of the gut to stop this constant ongoing poisoning of your bloodstream. What did you eat for breakfast yesterday? What did you eat for lunch? What did you eat for dinner? What did you eat for snacks? What did you drink? How much of what you drank did you drink? All of that is now in your bloodstream today. And that bloodstream is feeding your brain, it's feeding your heart, and what came across the gut besides the nutrition of what you ate yesterday. The color stabilizers, the mold inhibitors, the flavor enhancers, the toxins that were involved with the growing of those foods, the antibiotics or other growth hormones that were involved in the meat that you were eating, unless you were very careful about the source of the fruits, the vegetables, and the meat that you ate yesterday. If you were eating the standard American diet, you got the standard American poisoning from what you ate yesterday. And it leads to a greater toxicity of the liver and of the kidneys and of the gut. And while your body has its own built-in detoxification system, you can overwhelm it to where the body simply can't keep up with the poisons that are coming in. Now, you're going to have to, as a part of this, during this period of the detox balance or the purification, you're going to have to give up your old diet for a few days and switch to a gut-friendly diet of whole foods, no processed foods, and at least, get rid of the gluten, anything made of wheat, rye, barley, and oats. Now, me personally, as of about 3 weeks ago, I gave up sugar that comes with candies and treats, pies, cakes, cookies. I gave up gluten. I gave up anything with grain. And I don't mean 100% pure, but I would say 95, 96% elimination of these foods. And I have lost almost 10 pounds in the last 3 weeks by doing nothing more, essentially, than cleaning that crap out of my diet. I want to, when we start this on January 2nd, I want to hit the ground running. I don't want to catch up. I want to already be moving in that direction. Now, if you're just tuning in, I've been talking about a detox balance program and a purification program, one or the other. One of them is 10 days long. The other one could be 21 or 28, depending on how much time, concern, and care you want to invest in your health. But I absolutely guarantee you, if you join in with us in this program, you'll be shocked how much better you feel by the time it's over with, because it is loaded with foods, fibers, foods, green foods, cleansing foods, in the sense of supplements that will trigger the liver to do a better job of detoxifying itself, cleaning up the dysbiosis that's in the gut, and allowing better filtration of the kidneys to get more of the toxins out of the bloodstream. Now, part of fixing the gut is the use of some digestive enzymes. I talked to a fellow yesterday who has been scared by his doctor of the chance of Barrett's esophagus. Barrett's esophagus is a precondition of esophageal cancer. You don't want cancer, obviously. You don't want cancer anywhere in the body. But one place you don't want it is your esophagus. And so, because he's had digestive problems for some time, and he's been a patient for more than a decade, and he might even be listening this morning. He's been a patient for more than a decade. I don't know how we've never had this conversation before. But he was surprised to know that there was this digestive enzyme that he could take that would stop the digestive imbalance, the digestive upset, the acid reflux that is burning his esophagus to the point where his doctor is warning him of Barrett's esophagitis. As I said, it's the step before cancer of the esophagus. And so he wants him on omeprazole. He wants him to start taking a proton pump inhibitor. Stop the formation of acid. Now, these things don't completely stop the formation of acid. They just greatly decrease it. But they mess up the gut. And when you have a decrease of digestive power of acid in your stomach, you're not going to get complete digestion of proteins. And the proteins are going to end up in the gut undigested, where they're going to ferment and rot. Not to mention what it does to bones, because bones will start to soften with these drugs, because the bones aren't getting the proteins or the amino acids that they need. And it can definitely lead to osteoporosis. It's one of the big warning signs of using these acid blocking drugs. So I told him, I said, here, Here's just use this one thing. You take 2 to 3 of these at the end of your meal. That's it. If you don't have, if all you're eating is fruit, you don't need to worry about it because fruit doesn't need to be digested. Fruit just needs to be chopped up into a soup with your teeth and your mouth. Swallow that. It's going to go right through the stomach into the gut for absorption. But anything else, vegetables, certainly meats, they're going to sit around in the gut for a while. And your gut needs some help because if you've been eating the standard American diet most of your life or decades, you have lost the ability to produce enough stomach acid because the stomach simply doesn't recognize this stuff and it doesn't trigger the release of acid. We used to think that acid released from the walls of the stomach, from the parietal cells, was triggered by gastric expansion. Just the eating of food would trigger this. Well, that was true at one time. But now, because we put so many denatured foods into our gut, the body simply has a hard time figuring out how to break this stuff down. And a lot of it ends up undigested into the intestines, leading to some either severe constipation or severe diarrhea, or flip-flopping back and forth between them. And so the simple use of something called Zypan. And I told him, I said, listen, if this doesn't work, I'll buy it back from you. I have never known this to not work, except in some very rare cases of severe ulcers. And then we use something else instead. Now, and if you're just tuning in, as I said, I am talking about a program we're going to start on January 2nd. Those of you who want to join in with us, if you'll just, I'll tell you what, if you just email the office, no obligation, jackstockwelloffice@gmail.com, and tell them you want information about the detox or the purification you heard me talking about today, and we'll send it to you. You can look at it for yourself. If it makes your heart sing, then join in with us. If it doesn't, fine, we'll still be friends. But if you want to do something with your current health situation that the drugs just aren't doing for you, you go to the best drug there is, a healthy gut wall. Rebirth the good biota and say goodbye to the bad. And your body will love you for that. I know that sounds a little trite, but that's kind of how it works. Now, that's one half of what we do in the clinic. And I'll talk more, I'll expand this more during the next hour. In the time that's remaining here, which isn't very much, I want to talk about the other thing that we do. And that's the spinal correction. It's called NUCCA. NUCCA.org is a good source. Also, jackstockwell.com is a good source to find out about this. It's a little known spinal procedure that precisely corrects the position of the top vertebra of the spine, the atlas. That top bone is called the atlas because it's simply holding up the earth, your skull. Your skull balances on this little 2-ounce bone sitting underneath of it. And by correcting the tilt or the shift or the rotation of that vertebra, the body is able to overcome the effects of and completely eliminate many different conditions. Now, this atlas, the C1 vertebra, is only a 2-ounce donut-shaped vertebra sitting at the top of the spine. Trillions, literally trillions of nerve fibers from the brainstem travel through this little opening and flow down into the spinal column. And because of the small size of this opening and because of the atlas's close proximity to the brainstem, where all the vital processes of life are controlled, if the atlas is moved out of position, even a fraction of a degree, two very serious things can happen. And this is what I address in my clinic every day. I have 2 new patients that I'm seeing today. These 2 conditions, number 1 is body imbalance. The simple movement of that top bone, a fraction of a degree, to the right or to the left, will cause the head to move off the center of the body. This creates body imbalances from your head to your toe. More weight shifts to one side of the body than the other. As you often notice when you're standing up, you've got more weight on one side or the other. And this top bone can also rotate out of position, not just shifting one side or the other, but it can twist. And if the atlas is also rotated out of position, it can twist the entire spinal structure, including the pelvis, so that one leg appears to be shorter than the other. You don't have a real short leg. Unless you had polio or some other congenital problem with the development of one leg, your legs should be even. The thing that causes the short leg is the rotation of the pelvis. The thing that causes the rotation of the pelvis is the rotation of those top 2 bones. Because when they rotate under the skull, twisting, it pulls on the brainstem, where vital body balancing mechanisms in something called the reticular formation is located. And so when it twists, it will put a twist in the spinal cord, ever so slightly. And your body will twist your hips to get that twist out of the cord. And as your pelvis will twist a little bit, it pulls up the leg on one side, and that's where the short leg comes from. But it also leads to spinal muscle contraction, where you start trapping nerves, and that's where back pain comes from. Neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, sciatica, leg pain, butt pain, knee pain, hip pain, foot pain, from that twisting of the body architecture. And not having your atlas corrected to its proper position is like continuing to drive a car that's out of alignment. Something eventually has to pay the price. And over time, everything is going to break down in the body. And if you keep replacing the tires and never have the car aligned, you're just wasting your money. And the same thing is true for headaches, fibromyalgia, ADD, hundreds of other conditions that have been known to respond well to this kind of health care. And if the atlas bone is out of its normal position causing these problems, taking medication to cover up the symptoms never corrects the problem. It may make you feel better, but of course, as soon as you stop the medication, the problem returns. And the root cause has to be addressed to get a permanent result. And there is no substitute. There is absolutely no substitute for a precise correction of the atlas back into its normal position. Now, I'm kind of giving you what I give during consultations with a new patient. We still have this half price going on now through the end of the year. I don't have to see you before the end of the year. You just need to be scheduled before the next 2 weeks are up, and I would see you in January. Now, the second result of that top bone being out of position isn't just body imbalance and just improper structural stress on the joints of the body. The second serious result of the atlas being out of position is a restriction or distortion of the critical messages from the brain to all the parts of the body. Every cell, every organ, all the tissues that is not receiving adequate nerve energy and communication from the brain is going to suffer and to some degree degenerate. Make a fist. Just ball your hand up and make a fist. This represents the head. Now extend your index finger as if you're pointing at someone. Your index finger represents the body itself. The rest of your fist is the brain, the head. That index finger is the rest of your body. Now take a rubber band and wrap it tightly around that index finger at the base of the finger where it's attached to your hand. That rubber band represents your atlas, which is wrapped around the spinal cord near the brainstem and which has moved out of its proper position. Wait a few minutes. Your entire finger is going to turn white and then blue due to circulation that's being cut off from your finger. Now you can massage the finger with that rubber band on there. You can massage the finger trying to restore circulation to some degree. You can take a drug to cover up the pain that is resulting by sticking a syringe with pain medication. Severe cases, you could cut off the finger to erase the pain. But only the symptoms of the problem have been addressed, not the cause. The rubber band is the cause of the problem. By removing the rubber band's pressure on the finger restores quickly. Now, the same thing is true for the atlas that has moved out of its proper position. If you constrict or distort proper nerve flow from the brain to the organs and limbs throughout the body, your feet may hurt. You may have kidney problems. But the cause of all these problems may not be in the area where you're feeling it, but in the spine where this misaligned atlas is restricting or distorting proper nerve flow to the areas throughout the body. And if your atlas remains out of position for years, you're going to see degeneration of organs and muscles and cell tissue. And over the time, that could lead to some serious conditions, because pain is usually the last symptom to occur that a problem exists. That's important to understand. Pain is usually the last symptom of an ongoing process of degeneration that's been taking place for years. There's this lady I'm going to see today for her second visit. And she came in because of headaches and neck pain. She has no memory of any kind of trauma. She's in her 80s. And I showed her the x-ray of her neck after I took it. And this is no exaggeration. Her neck looks like she's played 40 years of NFL football. And I said to her, you don't grow up like this. Something happened very early in life that has led to this degenerative process. Left unfixed, has created the image that's in this x-ray. She couldn't think of anything. She thought and thought and thought and thought. Nope, I can't remember anything. So anyway, I went ahead, finished the pictures, was able, I could figure out what needed to be done, because I need to know what side I'm working on. Only one side will fix this, the other side will make it much worse. You can't get an adjustment on both sides of the neck and expect anything good to come of it. You're just going to jam the neck when you do that. So I need to know exactly what side I'm working on, and I can tell that from an x-ray. So I work on her. She stands up. She's amazed that she's standing straight, immediately standing straight, shoulders level, head is upright. And then she said something very interesting. Can falling off a horse do this? I said, I thought you never had any accidents. She says, well, yeah. When I was about 9 or 10, we did an awful lot of bareback riding, and I was falling off a horse all the time. So I showed her in her x-ray where the degeneration of the bone structure indicated years and years and years of degeneration. I mean, of all the things in life that may not be completely determined by the immediate evidence you're looking at, one thing is certain, an x-ray will tell you. X-rays have no agenda. They have no religious belief. They have no political persuasions. They have no bias. X-rays are x-rays. This is what you look like inside. And so when I look at an x-ray, a lot of times I can pinpoint within 5 or 10 years when the injury happened by the degree of degeneration of the bones of the neck. She had no other problems to speak of except her head was way out in front of her shoulders. It's called anterior weight bearing. And she could feel her neck being pulled back more upright. Now, am I done? No, there's an awful lot more work to do yet. But I tried to explain to her, not only were all of your muscle problems coming from this, but your organs have suffered to some degree. Now, the good news, the really good news about what I'm describing here is that repositioning that top vertebra of the spine brings healing. The repositioning of that vertebra is done by hand using extreme precision. I've had patients bring in their x-rays wanting to know why I couldn't use their x-ray. And I says, it's not precise enough. What do you mean? The hospital took this. As though the hospital is the end of perfection. And I pointed out in the x-ray, no, there's rotation of the skull. The head's twisted in this picture. I can't use this. I don't care if Mayo Clinic or Rochester Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic took this x-ray. It's a good x-ray but they're not looking for what I'm looking for. I'm looking for tiny little movements out of normal position that's trapping nerve fibers. And those nerve fibers are affecting how your heart works. They're affecting your digestion. They're affecting your immune system. They're affecting your eyesight. They're affecting how your brain works. And until that's brought back to a more normal position, you're going to suffer to some degree or another. And all the drugs in the world are not going to fix the problem. It's a structural problem. So, utilizing this procedure, you feel my hand resting just below the ear as the atlas is moved back into its correct position. And it's completely underwhelming because it's so extremely gentle. I don't know how many people, and those of you who remember my old radio show, Paul, who used to be my guest on Fridays, on Philosophical Friday, he made a comment that I have heard many patients make. He said, when you got through with that first correction, I thought the only thing that had happened is I'd been parted of my money. No drama, just a very underwhelming correction to the spine. Because when you put a drawer back into a cabinet, exactly opposite the way it came out, it takes very little effort to do that. But these people who were underwhelmed by what happened, within a visit or two, know something happened because they feel considerably better in a very little bit of time, a very short period of time. There's a fellow I'm going to see again today who's in his late 60s, and he is competitive in golf. And he is his handicap is like 2 or 3. And now he's playing scratch golf. Getting that spine back into a balance, he cleaned up his short game mistakes. And now he's shooting par. Now, there's no twisting of the neck, there's no popping of bones, there's no stretching, there's no quick movements or anything like that. Patients are often surprised how gentle it is, but almost within 48 hours, they can feel massive changes taking place inside the body. As the body's balance is restored, proper nerve communication to the organs, to the limbs, to the muscles resume functioning correctly, and the body can now self-heal as it was designed to do so. And this is why we see many different conditions responding to the same procedure. So whether it's migraines, I do the same thing. If it's problems with your mid back or your low back, it's the same thing. Now, the procedure's a little bit different from one person to the next because it's based on their x-rays. And no two people have the same x-ray analysis. Because of the flexibility of the neck and based on how long the misalignment has been present, and everybody over the age of 10 is misaligned. I have never seen anybody over 10 who isn't. They may not have a lot of symptoms yet, but the misalignment effect on the body's already started because I can see it when they're walking. And a lot of times these kids were out on the pitch at 3 years old, learning to play soccer and out there running into one another and banging heads. So this is why I see headache, migraine patterns in children, more so girls than boys, before puberty. And then by the time we're 10, trampolines, four-wheelers, horses, contact sports, snow, ice, all of these things banging the body over and over again until it's out of alignment to the point where you start getting nerves being trapped by muscle contractions, and you think you've slipped a disc. Discs don't slip, incidentally, but you think you've got a slipped disc. Somebody told you that. Or you've got a herniated disc, or you've got some kind of fracture or something, or some nerve trapped or whatever else. 9 times out of 10, low back pain is nothing more than a muscle in spasm that won't relax. And it won't relax because it's getting a command from the brain to tighten up, trying to instinctively bring the spine back to a balanced state. Which is why so many times, more than I could possibly count, working on somebody with sciatica or low back pain or some kind of leg pain that isn't sciatica, immediately standing up after I've worked on it, the pain's 50 to 90% reduced or completely gone. That fast, because restoring the balance between the head and neck allows that muscle, even down in your feet, to relax. When the head, which weighs anywhere from 10 to 13 pounds, sitting on top of this little 2-ounce bone underneath of it, comes out of balance, so that gravity is no longer pulling your head straight through the spine. Gravity is pulling your head off to one side or the other, so that that shift out of center balance occurs. Something's got to pay the price. The neck, the shoulders, the mid-back, the low back, the hip, the knee, something starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And then you throw your NSAIDs at it, ibuprofen, Advil, Tylenol, whatever else, that may for a short period of time help with the pain, but eventually it won't. And then you end up getting a prescription for something stronger, when all you have to do is bring the spine back into balance. Which I have done for between 22 and 23,000 patients since I came to Utah in 95. My practice is based on referral. I don't advertise except what I talk about here on this very limited audience at K-Talk. The 2 people that I'm seeing today are referrals. In fact, that's how I judge the success and effectiveness of what I'm doing. When I work on a new patient, if someone doesn't come in taking their place within 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't do my job. So too many of us wait entirely too long to get the atlas corrected. And this is mainly due to the ignorance of the vital role that the atlas plays in the health of the entire body. I just started on another medical doctor who has neck pain. And I just saw him yesterday for, I think, the 3rd time. And once I explained all of this to him, he just sits there with a smile on his face. He just said, well, of course, that makes perfect sense. And then whenever I work with a nurse with advanced degree on a master's level, or an RN that knows her stuff, or anytime I start with a new medical doctor, And I explain this stuff to them, and they say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I said, how much of this did you get in medical school? Because I like poking. I like sticking a stick in a hornet's nest. And they kind of smile and laugh, and they say, well, of course, none of it. Because they're not taught structure. They're taught the 3 Ds. Diagnose a disease, prescribe a drug. The 3 Ds. That's what medical school amounts to today. Now, countless problems can be helped, but a correctly positioned atlas is so fundamental to good health from everyone, from children to grandparents. Because I love starting on somebody in their 70s. One of the people today is in their early 80s. I love starting on people of that age who've been hurting their whole life because the underlying problem has never been addressed. I took care of a lady yesterday who is a bit of a celebrity in this state. If I told you who she was, you would know. Well, of course, I'm not going to do that. And she came in 4 or 5 months ago, literally screaming in pain. And she was a referral from somebody, literally screaming. She had to be half carried by a fellow who came with her. And it was almost impossible to do a consultation because she was in so much pain. And she did, help me, do something about this. So I just went ahead and forgot the consultation because I always do that later. And I took x-rays. And oddly enough, the x-rays weren't all that bad. They weren't very good, but they weren't as bad as I was expecting them to be, commensurate with the degree of pain she was feeling. And then I worked on her based on those x-rays. And it just very low back, just where the spine comes down to the butt and across the low back from side to side. Just horrible, horrible pain. And it took myself and this other fellow with her, and I don't think she weighs 100 pounds, maybe 105 at the most, and to lay her down very carefully on her side, crying the whole time. And at this point, she doesn't care how it works. She just wants to know if it works. And at this point, she's not even caring if it works or not. Please do something. So I work on her. And then I help her back up, and she's still in considerable amount of pain because of the degree of inflammation that's present. But she stands up, and she goes, oh, that's different. What's different? Tell me, what's different? I feel like I can stand up straight. But she says, but I can't move. I said, I know, it's going to take, I said what I say to a lot of patients. I'm bringing you in out of the burning sun. You're still sunburned. It's going to take a few hours to a few days for that inflammatory cycle to break down, and you're going to use a lot of ice. But the fact that you can stand up straight now on your own is significant. And I want you to walk around. And she could walk around. And then I said, I want you to sit down in this chair, and I want you to stand up and sit down 2 times in a row, which she could do. Guarded, of course, being very careful not to make the wrong move. Because if she moved into the wrong position, that muscle that's been spasming off and on for every 2 to 3 year period for 3 decades is finally starting to relax. But it's inflamed to beat the band. It's like having a hornet's nest in your low back. One position you can get in, the hornets are happy. You move 2 inches the wrong way, the hornets blow up. So I saw her yesterday for, I think, first time in a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe even 2 months. Just comes walking in just as happy as she can be. She says, I've got to go give this speech out of the country and here really soon. And I just want to make sure everything's okay. And she laid down on the table all by herself. I checked her. She was out just a hair. I worked on her a little bit. She could feel the change right away. And she, thank you. I just want to make sure before I leave the country I'm okay. And I said, well, that's another month away. It wouldn't hurt to see me the day before you get on the plane. So when this upper cervical spinal correction is made, body balance is restored. What do I mean by that? The high shoulder comes down. The rotated hip untwists. The contraction, the tight muscles all along one side of the body relax. Your shoulders go back. Your head comes back over your butt. How can all of that happen? By just moving this little 2-ounce bone under the skull? Because that's where your body's balancing mechanisms are located. An analogy I used to use. And let me just mention, until the end of the month, what I do is only half price. It's a Christmas special. I used to say we'll do 2 for the price of 1. But you know what? A lot of people don't know somebody else that's hurting like they are, and they feel restricted not being able to commit. You don't have to bring somebody with you. There doesn't have to be a second person. If you think that what I'm talking about here might benefit you, at least we can sit down and talk about it. If you decide you don't want to do it, fine. If you do, it's half price. But it's got to be scheduled. You call 801-523-1890 or go online, jackstockwell.com, and you can sign up there, and then the crew will get back to you and formalize everything. But there's no charge unless you want me to take care of you. Now, I was saying there that this is where the body's balancing mechanisms are located in something called the reticular formation. The reticular formation runs the whole length of the spine. It's up in the brainstem, goes all the way down to the bottom. And inside this reticular formation are nerve centers that control these muscles that allow you to stand up and walk around without thinking about it. Ever since you've been awake this morning, going to the bathroom, getting your breakfast, getting showered, getting dressed, how much time did you spend concentrating on which muscles you were going to use to do these things? Nonsense, of course. You don't think about this stuff because it's all automatic, because there's an area of the brain that controls this. Now, that area of the brain stem that controls muscle tone is called the facilitatory area. It's in the medulla, in the reticular formation. There's also another area of the brainstem called the inhibitory area. The inhibitory area inhibits. The facilitatory area facilitates muscle tone. When the facilitatory area of the brainstem is doing its job, muscles will have that strength, that tone, that tightness that's required for that muscle to do its job. The inhibitory area watches over the facilitatory area so that the facilitatory doesn't get out of control and start causing muscle imbalance, structural imbalance, muscle cramping, Charlie horses, all this kind of stuff. Now, the inhibitory, this is a little technical, but the inhibitory area in your brainstem is just inside the base of the skull, where most of my work is done. The facilitatory area is further up the brainstem. Which is the first one to become disaffected by the spinal misalignment? When the head is out of balance with the neck. The one that's the closest to the neck, obviously, the inhibitory area. So that the inhibitory area begins to be inhibited, and the facilitatory becomes too facilitatory, and that's where the muscle tightness comes in. The stiffness of muscles in the neck, the stiffness of muscles in the shoulders and the back and the low back, stiffness of muscles all the way down to your calves into your feet. Because the facilitatory is doing its job, but the inhibitory watching over it is inhibited and can't slow down the facilitatory. So a shoulder goes high, a hip goes low, your hips start to rotate. Your chest cavity rotates the same way or a different direction. And you can feel that twist throughout your spine. That's how people come into me on their first visit. And I can see it. I can see it from across the room. I can see it when they're walking down the hallway. I can see a 4-year-old child walking down the hallway and know if they've had a problem with their birth. I mean, you look at this with tens of thousands of patients over 3 to 4 decades, you begin to see trends. You begin to see something that's absolutely obvious. The same way a farmer can look at his animals out in the field and know there's something wrong. Before he realizes there's something wrong, he can see it immediately. So, the spinal correction that I offer frees up that inhibitory area to gain control back over the facilitatory, to bring the facilitatory under control, that allows the tight muscles to immediately start to relax. To the point after the first correction I make on a new patient, they stand up and they can tell immediately something's happened. They can feel their shoulders drop. They can feel their hips untwist. They can feel themselves coming back up vertical. And 4 times out of 5, they immediately feel taller. I can see it. I can see when they stand up, they're taller. And so I tell them, I ask them, do you feel taller? And they go, yeah. Yeah, I feel taller. Well, you are taller. You just gained 1 inch to 1.5 inches in height. How'd that happen? Well, you didn't grow. Your spine straightened up. It was hunched over. The spine just straightened up because the muscles that have been causing you to be hunched over for 5 decades just relaxed. And they just kind of walk around like, whoa. What else do you feel? I feel straighter. Yeah, you are straighter. I feel lighter. Yeah, you feel lighter because these muscles that have been so tight for so long are finally relaxing. Why don't other people do this? Well, there aren't a whole lot of people that do this. There's a lot easier ways to make money in my industry than what I do. I just do what I do because of the results that I get. I was really the first one to bring this to Salt Lake back in '95. There were a couple of people who were doing it, but on a very low scale. So when I first showed up on that radio show with Kay Henry, the first week of March of '95, I had already talked to her in advance because I had just moved my family here from Tulsa, where I had spent a year learning from one of the giants of this technique in his clinic in Tulsa. And having lived for a while in Utah in the past, I followed my friends out here from high school to go to school and just fell in love with Utah. But when I went back to school to learn to do what I'm doing now, I was out of the state for some time, but I had already been an addict to K-Talk Radio. As I said earlier, Bob Salter and Golden Delicious, and just a whole bunch of different people that were always fun to listen to. John Prince, Kirkwood, and that's where a lot of my knowledge of what's going on in the world came from. Yeah, I know it was biased, but who's not biased? So I get a hold of Kay Henry, and because I didn't know who she was, because I'd been gone for several years, and I found out she's suffering from asthma, really bad. She had to use her inhaler several times a day. And so I called up the station. She answered it as the morning, not just morning talk show host, but the station manager. And I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll get rid of your asthma if you'll give me an hour on your radio show. And back then, an hour at K-Talk was $350. And I think if I sold, I had just gotten out of school. and a year living on subsistence with 7 kids. And I think if I sold all my worldly possessions at the time, I couldn't come up with $350. My car certainly wasn't worth $350. And she said, okay, sounds good to me. Well, I've told this story before. Some of you have heard it. And so I made arrangements to work with her on a Monday morning, and then I would be on her show the following Thursday. And so she showed up at the office, and I was sharing an office with somebody else. And this was in South Salt Lake. And they had I took some x-rays and worked on her. And she kind of looked at me like, what did you do? Because she'd been to chiropractors and she was expecting something a little rougher. And I said, no, that's it. And I took some follow-up films, and the post x-rays showed that I pretty well made the correction. And she said, okay, I'll see you Thursday morning. Here's where the place is. And so I drive out there Thursday morning, and it's off of 33rd South, about 9th West, out in this big old grassy field. There's a side-by-side trailer out there with a big radio tower, and one car when I pulled up. Her car, of course. And I walk into the station just scared to death that I'm going to be on the radio. I've never done this before. I had never called in on the radio. There were so many times in my history of listening to K-Talk, I wanted to call in because of something that was being said, that I wanted to comment on it, and I would dial it, and then I would hang up the phone. I'm sure you've never done anything like that. No, I was just too scared. And so I walk in, there's nobody at the desk, nobody at the front office thing. And off to the side, I can see the broadcast room, and she's in there, and she's waving at me. And there's a monitor playing in the office area. And so she's talking on there, and it's about, 10 minutes before the top of the hour. And she says, ladies and gentlemen, he has come. John the Baptist has come to Salt Lake City. I'm looking around like, well, who in the world is she talking about? And she's Jewish. Not that means anything. It's just she's using the term John the Baptist. John the Baptist has come to Salt Lake City. So I'm just standing there more scared than I was before. My stomach's in my throat, and I don't even have a microphone in front of me yet. And she goes to news break. So she waves me into the room. There's a 5-minute break at the top of the hour. And, hey, I'm so full of anxiety and fear, I don't even ask her how she's doing. I don't know if I've done her any good or not, because I haven't seen her since I worked on her. I haven't talked to her. So she shows me where to sit. She says, have you done any radio before? And I said, no. Well, here, this is how far you want your mouth from the microphone. And I'm in complete charge of what's going on here. All you have to do is talk. Now, I had arranged with some friends ahead of time. At 8 minutes after the hour, you call in and say, what is NUCA? 20 minutes after the hour, you call in. How is it different from other kinds of chiropractic? At the bottom of the hour, you call in and say, well, how's it work? And at 40 minutes after the hour, you call in and say, what kind of conditions does it address? And then I'll just wing it from there. So the music's playing, or the commercial's playing, the music starts to play, and I get even more frightened. And all of a sudden, the on-air light lights up, and she says, ladies and gentlemen, he has come. She repeats it. John the Baptist has come to Salt Lake City. As you all know, I suffer terribly from asthma and have to use my inhaler sometimes several times a day. I want you to know, since Dr. Stockwell, who's sitting here with me right now, worked on me last Monday, this morning, for the first time in my memory, I could walk out of my apartment and take a deep breath and smell the western desert air. I'm in such a state of shock. What she just said doesn't even register with me. I have friends taping the show, so I heard this later on. And she says, Dr. Stockwell, thank you. As of yesterday, I only had to use my inhaler 3 times, which to me is a miracle. Welcome to Salt Lake City. Well, immediately, all 4 call-in lines light up. Through the next hour, none of my friends could get through because the lines were busy. And, Rhonda Lee, I think, if I remember right, Rhonda Lee, if you've listened to K-Talk long enough, you remember Rhonda Lee. I think she was the first one to get through. And you know how Rhonda Lee is. Rhonda Lee could sit down with a meeting of Jesus and Satan in the same room, and within 10 minutes, the 2 of them would be best friends. I hope that doesn't sound irreligious, but it gets the idea across what kind of a person Rhonda Lee was. And so I just start talking about my history of doing this kind of work with patients, where it came from, how long it's been around, the kind of research and tons of research that's behind it. And people would call in and they talked about their back pain, talked about their migraines, talked about their knee pain, talked about their indigestion, talked about their insomnia as we would go through the patients during the hour show. My wife was over at the office. I would give out, in fact, Kay Henry kept telling you, give out your number, I keep forgetting to give out the phone number. By the time, I would say by the time the first 2 weeks had gone by, we had made 30 appointments. 30. And then she was so happy with the radio show and the kind of interest it generated, she said, would you come back next month? Yeah, you bet I will. And then, will you come back next month? And that's May. And then after the 3rd show in May, Starley, the owner of K-Talk, was there in the office. And it turned out that there was a 1-hour program on Saturday morning opening up. And so I made arrangements to buy that hour. And $350 an hour. And I figured if I can't make $350 off an hour of talking about what I do, I should go do something else. I never got to be the pro golfer I wanted to be, but I have to do something else if I can't generate $350. And so that went on steady once a week on Saturday mornings until the fall, when Dick and Tom purchased the radio station. United Broadcasting purchased it from Starley. And then sometime during the winter, there was a falling out between Dick and Mills. I don't know if you've ever tried to get Dick to see things your way. He'll listen to you. Dick is very, very, very nice and gracious in that respect. If he's already made his mind up, you're not going to change it. You're not going to change his mind. But he and I were friends since high school age. And one of the most hard-headed people I have ever met in my life. And so he calls me up on a Friday afternoon and says, can you talk about anything besides health? And I said, sure, in my braggadocio way. Yeah, sure. He says, good, because you're the morning talk show host Monday. You got 3 days to get ready. Monday through Friday. I don't remember if it was 6 to 10 or 7 to 10 or 7 to 9. I don't remember what it was. I've had 2 hours and 3-hour 2-hour programs, 3-hour programs. And I'm sitting there about, what happened to Mills? Well, we had a disagreement. Okay, let's see what happens. And I probably gave a bunch of horrible radio shows. But Dick stayed with me until I could get the knack of it. And man, that went on until 2015, 20 years. And then I took 3 years off to do podcasting, and it was back on in 18. I've been there since 18, which is what, 7 more years. And so I get a kick out of this. I get a kick out of this because in discussing what is going on, whether it's nutrition or whether it's structural balance to the body, these two things work hand in hand with one another to restore health. If the body's out of alignment, there's going to be a nerve interference problem that restricts healing. If the nutrition is out of balance, there's going to be a metabolic imbalance that prevents the body from a full sense of healing. So the patients that I take care of who get it, who understand what I'm talking about, experience massive changes in their life. Their bodies start working again. The brain starts working again. And the pain goes away. And it works hand in hand. I can't do one without the other. So when this correction is made, the body balance is restored. Stress, tension, pressure from the area below the brainstem is removed. This reactivates the flow of healing messages from the brain to the body, and the self-healing process begins. And so after that first correction to Kay Henry, I made a couple of more, and she never did suffer asthma after that to the degree that she had up to that point. We didn't get rid of it completely because I couldn't get her to understand how dietary changes she needed to make, but she didn't care because she was doing so much better. And then I have gone on and become GAP certified, taught by Dr. McBride herself, for getting the best education I can in restoring gut health. And I went on to board certification in the work I do structurally. And there's only a few, there's about 300 people who do what I do around the world. But there's only 10% of us, 30 of us that are board certified. I'm about the only, except for a couple of exceptions, I'm the only one between the Mississippi and California. And board certification is very, very difficult to achieve. I mean, very difficult. It's the only board certification in all of healthcare that I know of, but it's based strictly on performance. Most board certification processes in medicine, dentistry, other types of healthcare professions require additional classes and testing, papers and testing. With this, you have to demonstrate it with pre and post x-rays. You have to be able to send in, you can't cherry pick 10 people in a row that you saw with a pre-x-ray and a post x-ray demonstrating 80% reduction of the misalignment factors in that film. And that may sound easy, but it ain't. It took me years to get my skills to the point where I could do that. I was asked twice yesterday, "You're not going to retire, are you?" And my standard answer to that is, well, what would I do? What would I do? Golf? No, I'm not going to retire. I'm probably getting to the point where I might want to cut back in my hours. But two of the people who were most impressive in my life to teach me what I do died while they were in full practice. If they got old enough, they died. But they were practicing, even on a limited basis, seeing patients 2-3 times a week in their clinics until they went to the great adjusting table in the sky. Now, I've talked about the gut and how important that is leading up to the purification and detox stuff I wanted to talk to you about. I talked to you about what I do structurally that addresses all kinds of problems you wouldn't necessarily expect in a chiropractic office. I'm looking here, epileptic seizure, the stuff we've done, female disorders, high blood pressure, infertility, Multiple sclerosis, we've had good results with that. Trigeminal neuralgia, TMJ is a piece of cake to fix. Various sports injuries, sleeping disorders, scoliosis. If I get scoliosis early enough, within 2 or 3 corrections, I can balance those shoulders. Numbness, tingling, neuropathies of various types. A lot of neuropathies require a certain dietary change to go along with it. It's not just the adjustment. There's some dietary stuff. So now I want to talk about these metabolic reset things that we're doing, because I suggested at the very beginning of the program, boy, almost 2 hours ago, about the purification program and the detox program, because myself and my crew, of which there are 2, Hannah and Trudy, we're going to be doing this together starting on January 2nd. Now, it's something that you can get a lot more information about. Just email the office, jackstockwelloffice.com, if you'd like more information. And if you decide you want to join with us, there's a good discount that we offer off of the standard price to be a part of this. So we do it together, because usually this requires enough of a change, especially in the 21-day program, that you need to do it as a community. And this purification program is more than just a cleansed diet. It's a structured program that brings some healthy lifestyle habits back into focus. It's a 21-day program. It's designed to purify, nourish, and help you maintain healthy body weight by eating whole foods, exercising, drinking some very nutritious shakes, and taking some supplements made with whole foods. And it will support a healthy liver. It supports a healthy kidney and gallbladder function. It supports intestinal and immune system health, and it supports the maintenance of a healthy weight, along with suggestions for improved lifestyle. So it includes a variety of supplements. There's several containers that are involved with this. A variety of supplements that you take daily, including a nutritional shake that offers these essential whole food nutritional compounds that are available dairy-free, available chocolate, vanilla flavored. But the meal plan includes a variety of vegetables and fruits for the first 10 days, and with some selected proteins that are added on day 11. There aren't very many proteins the first 10 days, because it's mostly oriented towards purifying the system. And then certain proteins are added on the 11th day for 10 more days. That's the purification program. There's also something that's different called the detox balance. And it's a whole food based nutrition that supports safe, healthy, effective toxin removal during all 3 phases of the metabolic detoxification. It's designed to help the body process the endogenous toxins that we encounter every day in our food, our water, and our air, because these toxins contribute to a lot of health challenges. And the participants who've done this before just end up feeling not just healthier, but happier when it's over with, because a lot of this crap has been cleaned out of not just the gut, but out of the lymphatic system as well. And there's 3 phases to it. Phase 1, and then there's a 10-day detox and a 28-day detox, depending on how serious you are about this. Phase 1 is to get rid. It's the stored fat-soluble toxins are converted to kind of an unlocked state, which simply means to make them more water soluble. In many cases, more toxic than its original form. So it has to go through a second phase of neutralization. And these highly toxic substances produced in phase 1 convert to non-toxic molecules and become even more water soluble so you can pee them out where they've been locked up in the liver, or fat cells. Cellulite is an evidence of these things being present. Then the third phase, these water-soluble toxins just leave the cells, leave the body for good. Now, you can get more information, I said, at jackstockwell.com. Also, if you want to take advantage of this half price off on the structural work I do, it's good till December 31. After December 31, for the sake of keeping the doors open, I got to go back to full price. Now, I don't have to see you before the end of December. You just need to get a schedule made before the end of December. I can see you anytime in January, but the schedule needs to be made before the end of the month. 801-523-1890. 801-523-1890 to get scheduled. It doesn't cost anything. The consultation doesn't cost anything. But you are scheduled for me to take care of you at the end of the consultation. If at the end of the consultation you decide you don't want to do it, like I always say, we'll still be friends. You can go your way, and I'm going to get an hour break, which some days is very well appreciated. So, these things work hand in hand with one another. Just as I was describing the facilitatory and the inhibitory areas in the brainstem working hand in hand, the example that I often give and that I will often give is a dog sled. And you're in the Iditarod, and you're racing from Fairbanks to Nome, 1,000 miles. And you've got a team of dogs that usually they're single file, and you got the lead dog out in the front. But I want you to imagine two lines of dogs side by side, because you want to get there even faster. So you've got a half a dozen dogs on the left side of the reins and a half a dozen dogs on the right side of the reins. And the dogs that are on the left represent the facilitatory area of the reticular formation. In other words, the part of your nervous system that causes muscles to get tight when you stand up from the couch to go to the kitchen, to get something out of the fridge, to take back to the couch, to continue the show you're watching, without you ever thinking about putting one foot in front of the other, without you ever thinking about opening up the fridge door and grabbing that nice, beautiful green salad that you didn't finish at lunch, and you're going back to the couch. You don't think about it. You don't think about the muscles that are required to stand. You don't think about the muscles that are required to sit down. You just do it. That's the facilitatory area of the reticular formation doing its job. But the facilitatory gets constant, ongoing synaptic stimulus to tighten these muscles. And the inhibitory area that's just below it in the brainstem keeps a watch on the facilitatory so the facilitatory doesn't get out of hand and muscles get tight. Except when you want them to be tight, when you stand up and walk around. Now, due to its location in the brainstem, when the spine misaligns, the inhibitory area is disaffected. It becomes inhibited itself, so it can't do its job. Now, imagine this dog sled. The dogs on the left, and I'm using this example here on the screen in front of the people on the street. The dogs on the left are the facilitatory, the dogs on the right are the inhibitory. And they're racing a straight line, following the dog team in front of you. Now, when the inhibitory area, because of a misalignment to the spine, happens, the facilitatory takes over. And on your dog sled, that means your dog sled is going to start going off to the right. Because the inhibitory is weakened, the facilitatory takes over, the dogs on the left are stronger than the dogs on the right, and your dog sled starts veering off to the right. You stop the sled. You take a look at these dogs. What the heck's going on with you guys? What's wrong here? You find out they went through some stickers or something, and they've got these stickers in their paws. So you take some time to fix the inhibitory side of your dog sled. You pull these little stickers out of their paws. They're all happy. Everything's fine. Mush, you scream as the thing takes off again, and now you're going straight because the inhibitory is as strong as the facilitatory. When I make that correction to the spine, I open up the inhibitory area of the brainstem that allows its control over the facilitatory to regain, and muscles relax. Shoulders level. Head and neck come back to the vertical. Pelvis untwists. The pelvis levels. Time after time after time. That's why I probably am not going to retire. That is too fun doing that. I have 2 new patients today, one in their 70s, one in their 80s, if I remember correctly. And I love taking care of people of that age because they sometimes are the most shocked at the results as to what happens. But I have pre-pubertal kids I take care of. There's this one little boy I've been taking care of for 2 years who had a rather moderate to severe case of autism. And they'd heard about us and the effect we were able to have on autistic children. I talked about him here not too long ago. He was in the office yesterday, or they're in the office Monday. And to try and take very accurate x-rays on an 8-year-old, moderate to severe autistic little boy, to get them to sit still long enough in an environment that frightens them, to get accurate x-rays, accurate enough that I know where the misalignment in the spine is. And he had a pretty big misalignment because he's always hitting himself in the head. They were here Monday. When I walked into the room, he walked over and laid down on the table. And he's looking at his father or mother's iPhone, watching a video. He lays down on his side, and he lets me take care of him. And I do a leg check, and the legs come even, and he gets up. And his mother says, "Say thank you, Dr. Jack. Thank you, Dr. Jack." Now, between the structural alignment to the spine and some very important dietary changes that I got the mother to research, he's on his way to a normal life. He's got a ways to go yet, but he's on his way now to a normal life. Can autism be reversed like that? That's where GAPS came from. Dr. McBride. She had a severely autistic son, but she went after the gut. And by fixing her son's gut, he's now an adult, perfectly normal, no indication of severe autism whatsoever. All right, we're coming up towards an end. So I've talked about the spinal correction to the spine. I talked the first 40, 45 minutes about the health of the gut, and that's where healing begins anyway. I think that we had a podcast in the past called Digestion, the Beginning and the End of Life. You're not any more healthier than the digestive level you do with your food. And of course, that leads to gut health or gut ill health. And then I talked about the purification program and the detox balance program. I think we're going to be, if I remember right, I'm not sure which one we've decided on, me and the 2 girls, which one we're going to do. But I will know by next week when I do the radio show which one we're doing. These need to be ordered in advance. You would order them through forbiddendoctor.com. Will give you a nice discount that you can't get anywhere else. And to join in and be a part of this, I think this will be a lot of fun. And we can talk on the phone, we can email, do all these extra things that are necessary to stay on target. Because it's going to require a bit of lifestyle change. But I have never seen anybody in the 20 plus years that I've been doing standard process products who will actually stick with the purification or detox programs and not come out even as little as 10 days later, feeling years younger, with a lot more energy and reestablishing balance in the gut, where years of constipation or years of diarrhea get cleaned up really fast. No pun intended. All right, what do we have here? About 5 minutes. So that's essentially what we do. I spend all week doing this. I have 2 new patients today. I have 2 new patients tomorrow. I have 2 new patients Friday. I don't know what I've got next week. But this offer of half off, as I've said several times already, I'm repeating myself again. I don't have to see you before the 1st. I can see you in January. You just need to be scheduled by January 1st. Because there are a lot of people taking advantage of this, and I want to make sure that they're spaced properly, where I don't have too many in one day, so I can give adequate attention to the people I'm taking care of, plus all of the follow-up visits that I see with people as well. But this 21-day program is designed to purify, nourish, and help maintain a healthy body weight by eating more whole foods, getting away from the processed stuff. And it involves some very delicious nutritional shakes. The detox program is to go through the 3 phases of liver detox. The P451 detoxification system, glucuronidation, sulfurification, methylation. What's the other one? There's another method, all involved with detoxifying the liver. And the liver is your primary blood filtering system. And you will never be any healthier than your liver is. You will never feel any better than your liver feels. And just as you, if you had a decent car, are very careful about oil changes. And sometimes you give more attention to the quality of the oil you put in your car than the quality of food you put on the table. Or at least you know somebody like that. K-Talk people aren't like that, but there's people out there that are, that just don't really care about it. You've heard me talk about all the bad fats and the bad oils. And I just discovered, Legends, the Legends restaurant in Sandy, right off of 106 South, uses, they got rid of the bad fats, and they're just using good fats in their fryers. Well, there goes my brain. Beef. Tallow, yes. They're using tallow to fry in. More people are waking up to this because more of the population is demanding this. More of the population is waking up to the evils of these bad fats. So as far as the detox and the purification, you want to set a date. You want to get the promotional material. You can get that from us. Promotion strategy, I'll be talking about it more in the next 2 radio shows. And there are incentives involved with discounts on additional purification detoxification material later on down the road. All right, what do we got here? Top of the hour. I am going to end the recording here at K-Talk as of right now, and I need to save that. And I'm going to ask Paul if he'll help get that up on where you can access it. And then to those who are on the stream, once again, thank you so much for supporting this. If you will like and subscribe, we're approaching 900 subscribers to the health show. the political show. The politics show's a lot less than that. But you don't have to pay any attention to my version of what's going on in the world politically to take advantage of what we have to talk about health-wise. So to the stream, I'm saying goodbye to those of you that are there. I will see you all Monday. But thanks for being a part.